we start to have this effect of like Teflon, right? So fear is very sticky. Things just keep collecting on why we should be afraid, right? And so when we have a practice that just says, "Hey, fear, let's sit a second together and let's just practice what else is here," we start to notice that fear has less of its effect because we can get into wonder. We can hold two things at once, people-hearted and business-minded, rather than trying to just balance that or be one thing or the other. When we're able to hold something, is what this ampersand represents, we start to have experiences of discernment and insight and wisdom that are marked by some really big breakthroughs and transformations I'm seeing with clients.
Welcome to the Freedom Experience, Beck. Fantastic to have you on. This is number 5. We've tried 5 times. We've come to your house today, and we're actually in the garage. We've got this great plan. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm here with Beck today. We've tried to get this episode recorded 5 times in the past. I've traveled to Boulder, set up in Beck's garage to make sure we actually get this done. So instead of introducing Beck myself, I am going to hand the floor over to you. And why don't you tell us a little bit, Beck, about who you are before we get into it?
Yeah, I'd love to start with how we know each other and what we're wearing. Right?
Yeah, let's go.
So you're wearing a Humankind Business Leaders t-shirt and a Small Giants hat, and I'm wearing the reverse, so we know each other through Small Giants, where I've just been so thrilled to be a part of this community, sponsored the summit this year. I've been a teacher in the Leadership Academy, and
hosting a dinner.
And hosting
a dinner tonight in Boulder.
So Small Giants means a great deal to me because of what Small Giants stands for is a lot of what we'll talk to about today about Humankind Business Leaders. In a nutshell, I refer to myself as a business geek with Buddhist roots. So that usually gets people to take a pause. Yeah, I don't know, people-hearted, business-minded. So I think that's the way to just sort of introduce myself. I am the former COO and became CEO of StickerGiant, which became a small giant, named a small giant. And I'm a former licensed and practicing psychotherapist. I have a couple master's degrees, one in human and organizational learning, which gives me some of that geeky stuff in business, and also then a master's degree in counseling psychology with a Buddhist psychology emphasis. And I've been in the corporate world, and now I've spent almost 2 decades in the small and medium-sized business companies. So I come at things myself and with clients from the business aspect of things. I love the business part. I love to talk about what's not going well, what is going well, how could I help leaders do something different from my own experience, and then I love the human factor of it all. And I interweave all of that with clients, right? I'm not trying to just do sort of that personal sort of leadership coaching or be a business advisor. So I refer to myself as a business advisor and leadership coach.
Brilliant. So you come from West Virginia, very conservative upbringing. You go into the corporate environment, FedEx? No, UPS. Sorry, yeah. UPS. In a UPS, come out into psychology, correct? And becoming a psychologist with a Buddhist slant, and then go back into the corporate world. And I just think this journey...
Well, we're back into the small business
world. Right. Sorry, not into the small business world, ultimately CEO of StickerGiant, which ultimately is sold as well,
that's right? Yeah.
So I mean, that's a full journey.
Yes, quite.
If we go back to the sign on the wall, because we're here today to talk about keeping that tension between the sort of harder edge of business and the softer edge, and we'll get into that in a moment. But it goes back to what we're looking at, the sign that we're looking at, and that's in the middle of the sign here.
Yeah, the ampersand. So this sign is from West Virginia. The town is Newton, West Virginia. And it's where my parents both grew up. They grew up a mile apart from each other. So I have country roots. We're in my garage. Like, you can't spend any amount of time with me without seeing sort of a commoner, like a person that grew up around people with dirty hands and willing to work to do what needed to be done.
And you do your coaching in this.
I see clients here.
Yeah.
I see a lot of clients online. So maybe a quarter of my clients meet with me here. It's super fun.
Yes.
So my parents were raised as country folks, and my grandfather had a store right between my grandparents' houses. So he bought the store from this guy Smith, and then sign came down when my grandfather put his sign up. It's a much longer story. There's some information about it on the website, but the sign lived on in one of my grandfather's friends, because in the country you don't throw anything away.
Yeah.
One day we'll need that Smith grocery store sign.
Even if we turn it over.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything has a purpose. And I was walking around the town in Newton, and one of my grandfather's friends still had this in one of his outbuildings. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, the way you talk in the country is, what would you take for that sign out in your outbuilding? And I asked him, and he said, what in the world would you want with that sign? And then that was more than 10 years ago, and I had no idea why I wanted the sign. I just knew I needed it.
Yeah.
Longer story about how I got it here. And then Michael Morton, my graphic designer, fell in love with the hand stenciled letters and that ampersand. And so we already knew the ampersand would be an important part of humankind business leaders. And he replicated that actual ampersand to represent what we'll talk a good bit about today around holding two things at once. What is in between is, I think, what we're all looking for, is if we can hold two things at once, people-hearted and business-minded, rather than trying to just balance that or be one thing or the other. When we're able to hold something, is what this ampersand represents, we start to have experiences of discernment and insight and wisdom that are marked by some really big breakthroughs and transformations I'm seeing with clients.
Yeah, when the sort of world that we live in at the moment, and the political environment that we live in, and the economic environment that we live in at the moment, we tend to, I guess, over-index.
We do.
To one side. So we're kind of leaning too much toward being sort of business-minded, or the harder edge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then some of us lean too much toward the people side.
That's right.
I was on a call this morning with a very frustrated CEO who was saying to me, I think I've just over-indexed on being too soft, and I've kind of been there as well. Where you want to create a place that's a great place to work, you want to create a great culture, but there's this tension that we need to find, which actually kind of gets us working properly. Otherwise, I think you were talking about balancing, where you're taking one side and putting on the other, and you kind of just
can't really balance. I mean, you can, but it actually doesn't give you the insight you're looking for. Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you said you were talking to a leader that believed he was getting a bit too soft, right?
Too soft, yeah.
And then we can find plenty of leaders, right, that would say, I think I'm getting too hard-edged. Our frameworks are starting to really create this closed system, a binary system of you did it or you didn't do it. We made the KPI or we didn't. And we start forgetting how to actually have relationships. So on that business side, when we start to get super focused on hard charging, accomplishment, hard driving, achievement, right? We've got to make our goals, which, by the way, we do. But when we're holding that edge really strong, we notice our people start to get a little disengaged, and then they start getting a lot disengaged, right? So we're not talking about dropping that edge. We're actually talking about moving even 1%. The power of 1%, right, is beyond anything that we can imagine over and over and over again. The aggregation of marginal gains is what people refer to, and there's information about that on my website too. But if we just move a bit from, things are starting to feel, we felt this at StickerGiant, things started to get too stilted around the systems and the methods we were using. So we started bringing in Peter Singate's work around learning organization, and we started bringing in more agile principles, and we started getting really interested in what are the interactive rituals, what are the meetings like, right? To make sure that we were spending time guiding people toward the business outcomes that we needed. So it's relational. So if we stay on that hard edge, we start having less relationship.
And I imagine the tendency sometimes is to go from one extreme to the other.
Right.
I was thinking, and we talked about this the other day with another CEO business owner who was at that point of kind of breaking down and comes across EOS, it goes through a mind shift, brings EOS into the organization, really helpful. Then he says to me, I feel like we're losing the kindness side here because we're really, really focused. We're a high achieving team. We're really focused on results, but we've kind of lost our kindness along the way somehow. And it's, yeah.
Yeah, so let me just say, first of all, we use EOS. I'm certified in, StickerGiant. And I'm certified in organizational rewilding. I have friends that are colleagues that use scaling up, Vern Harnish's work. Yeah. So there is nothing wrong with those systems.
They're really important to give you
so
cadence.
So if you think about business minded, they represent that in general. And I think we're going to drop in the notes here the actual visual of this model. But when we over-index on them, what I'm finding is that is a signal when we start over-indexing and going really high on business-minded that we're in fear.
Yeah.
We're motivated by fear because if we don't make our numbers, if we don't time the market just right, if we don't, all those things that we worry about, then we start to have an experience of fear. And when we're in fear, we double down on the thing that we are best at or that we're focused on. So if we double down on business minded, like the CEO we were talking about, we start to sense this thing of like, I think we're losing some of the relationship that's important, right? It's also true if you double down on being people hearted, right? If you go overboard on caring deeply and deep devotion and some of the ways that we understand being very people focused, that's also fear. We're afraid that if we don't over-index on the people side, that people won't like us, that they'll leave. I mean, it just goes on all of these ways that both of these, when we over-index on people-hearted or business-minded, the way I think about it, it's fear.
Yeah.
And so here's what I'm saying to leaders. I'm asking them, where are you afraid? So that was my edge to begin with. I was afraid to ask leaders that worked with me in just a kind, open way, like, where's your fear here? And the responses I'm getting are overwhelming, right? Of like, oh yeah, I am in fear.
Yeah.
What do you know about it? We know a lot about that experience. So what we do is we do a two-hand practice where we say, okay, what do you know about fear? And let's place that in this hand. We flattened out on top line over the last 2 years. I'm scared to death that's going to be the be all end all. I'm afraid of if we don't get this next product into market, right? We could go on and on with scenarios. Let's put that there. I'm afraid all our people are going to leave us. I'm afraid of tariffs. I'm afraid of, right?
Because there's so much to be afraid of.
There's so much to
be
afraid of.
There's a lot going on.
And it's running in the background. So what I've figured out is like just asking someone. Well, I asked you yesterday. We were having a conversation, right? Well, what are you afraid of? And I immediately watched the shape and look on your face change. And you knew exactly, right? So we just put that here. And then we go to, okay, well, what do you know about when you've been successful before? So it's a sense of that traveling that distance is actually just saying, well, how could you be even people-hearted to yourself first?
You tend to look at all the fear and they pile upon each other. When we were talking yesterday, I was talking about stepping into big shoes. So taking over a community where there's been two phenomenal co-founders involved in Bo Birmingham and Paul Siegel. Right. So you step into these very big shoes, not to mention all the work that Hamza and the rest of the team have done. Yeah.
And the expectations of a community to a new leader.
Am I going to let this community down?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So, and then you think of past failures and you pile them on like business failures. Past, it starts holding you back. And we were talking about Davin as well with Thieves of Purpose, one of the big thieves of purpose. And then on the other hand, it's, well, where can I take this community?
That's right.
How can I 10x the impact that it's had? How can we make it a more global community? And you used a very good term from Marina.
Oh, yes. Marina Suhulutsky says, how good could it get? Oh, it's one of my favorite. It gives me goosebumps.
So when you look at this and you think, how good could it get?
Right, that's right. Like,
and then there's a fear.
Are we asking ourselves that beautiful question?
So for those listening in, Beck and I are kind of using hands here to kind of illustrate this. We'll put a diagram in as well, and you'll be able to download that. But obviously, if you jump on YouTube, you'll see what Beck's coaching me through at the moment. So I've got what's the exercise that I'm doing here?
Well, we're forgetting for the first part, like fear gets us into a state of not a full experience. So the amygdala shuts down everything else. Fear is about the amygdala. I use a gripped hand to explain it. It's the first part information starts getting processed in the limbic system and it closes. Fear closes everything down. And then it starts surveilling for where can I find the data that would justify and back up why I should be.
So this is getting into the weeds, right?
Yeah,
kind of going. Okay.
Right. Well, I know this about him, and I know this, and then and then we have all these past failures. That's when the amygdala really gets active to be like, well, let's tell me about all the times that I can prove that I could have done something better. And then we start losing sight of what I'm calling wonder, a state of fear that takes us away from wonder and love and curiosity. And it's an exhausting state to stay in fear. And what I want to know is how many business leaders are willing to admit they're exhausted and explore that fear is one of the things that's exhausting. So we don't want to push it away. We really want to know it, and we want to have this practice of let's put that in this hand.
When I'm doing this practice, I'm just sitting, and am I listing these down as I put them in that hand, or I just
conscious
of it? Or?
Yeah, the way I work with it is like a meditation or a mindful practice. So there's a grounding practice that I do, 3 points of contact with your hands flat on your thighs, right? And I've got some things that we can drop in notes about people. Right. So 3 points of contact, can I get grounded? And then if I'm working with this practice, I'll turn my hands up in the air like I'm holding something. So I would put fear in one or the other hand. Like, what are all the things I'm afraid about? And just feel the sense of, gosh, that's a lot.
So in my case, I'm fearful of stepping into these shoes. I'm fearful of past failures. I'm fearful of making a wrong move and crashing the community, so to speak.
Right.
So all of those fears there. But on the other hand, it's the things that I've done well in the past, the businesses that I have built, the success with growing teams.
The ideas that you have, right? We talked yesterday about ideas for the community, which you aren't short on. And none of the community members, including myself, are short on, right? I mean, you're not searching for ideas about what to do now, but you go back to the worry is you want to represent the community and our founders, Bo and Paul, well, right? So you go back and forth between these two, right? All these ideas and the excitement about taking this forward and people that are interested in spending time talking to you about that. So you're holding this I call it in an inquiry state.
Yeah.
So you leave fear by saying, hey, fear, I got you. I know you. I'm going to work with you. I'm not trying to push you away. Here's all I know about fear. And then you begin this sense of opening a bit and having an inquiry about, well, what else is true? That can't be all that's true. The amygdala would love for you to know that's all that's true because it's scared. It doesn't want to go try these other things. So we just say, okay, great, we know that, and what else is true? And then we sit in just a few brief moments of holding these two things, right? Of an inquiry, a deep inquiry, an inner inquiry. A lot of this fear stuff is external stuff.
All the noise is just constantly going on around us.
And that noise can't let us get back to ourselves. Now we're here, we're practicing, we're back to ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of the practices I teach leaders is about how do you know where you are when you're constantly out in the muck of the world, your business, your family, your neighborhood, your church, right? It's a lot. And how do you make it back to yourself? So that's 4 points of contact and getting grounded. And then how do you have a practice that says, what's going on here? What are these things out there that are creating fear? I'm going to put them here. And I'm going to make a choice to move toward curiosity, which I'm calling wonder and love. I'm just going to hold this in this idea of inquiry. And I'm going to ask myself, okay, I know I'm afraid. I also know I'm surrounded by a ton of support. We could go on and on with that list. And then we ask ourselves, what is the active choice I want to make here? So fear takes us out of active choice. It debilitates us and exhausts us. When we can practice like this and we can get into this internal inquiry, we start to have wisdom, discernment, and insight that we would never
opening a door, right?
have.
Yeah.
We'd never have them stuck in fear. So we had talked about this a little bit. We start to have this effect of like Teflon, right? So fear is very sticky.
Yeah.
And like things just keep collecting on why we should be afraid, right? And so when we have a practice that just says, hey, fear, let's sit a second together and let's just practice what else is here, we start to notice that fear has less of its effect because we can get into wonder. Now, what's important is that we have to be able to go back and forth.
This is where keeping the tension comes in, because it's not a scale, it's a sort of linear.
That's right. Because if we start talking about, balance was the thing of, maybe the early 2000s and even into the early 2020s, right? And we all wanted work-life balance and people started challenging that and they call it integration. The problem with balance is it's suggesting there's a problem that something should be removed and something should be added, right? Too much of this.
Go back to the scales. Yeah.
Let's get things all balanced here. What I'm saying is if we can hold things and see how they are in alignment or not, we can hold the tension, not trying to move fear away or add some sort of curiosity. We're just in the reality of what's happening. So this is what I'm saying is wrong in the world and is coming into our businesses. What this is happening, it's not just in the world, it's happening in the world, in politics, in society, it's in your business. And if you can learn as a leader to hold two things at one time without double down on one or the other, then you can start to have some movement toward insight, discernment, and wisdom. But if you don't, you're going to be stuck in these polar opposites. And I saw it happen at a really good company that I ran. I saw it happen. And we would work with it. What's happening here? We weren't always perfect either. But everyone has a normal inclination, like in all of the sort of Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
So, and people hard and business-minded, when I talk to leaders, they immediately know, where's your go-to? So think about it. Where's your go-to? And then on your leadership team, what's the makeup? Do you have more business-minded people? Do you have more people-hearted people? Or you kind of, have a mix? Most people do. And then how often are you getting an argument, dissension around, shouldn't we be thinking more about our folks? Are we thinking about our folks so much? I talk to leaders about, well, we increased everyone's pay, gave better benefits, and I say, what did that do to your profit line? Oh, we're afraid we're not going to break even. So you compromise something that in business, you have to be profitable, especially in SMBs run, you've got to be profitable. You have to have good cash flow. You have to have money to invest.
Yeah,
So we've compromised business principles to give people, our fear was they're going to leave or they're going to not like us. You gave people more than you could afford, and now you've put your company in jeopardy. So you can kind of see how that works. So we over-index on a thing that if we had moved things a little bit closer to each other, and in the 4-quadrant model, you're moving up toward wonder, curiosity, love, joy. You're starting to see that you could actually explain to people, we're going to give a better benefits in the next quarter, and we're in a holding pattern on doing a comp analysis until next year. Here's why.
And being clear on what the why is.
Right. And the things we believe in, right? We really believe in transparent finances and helping people understand. As business leaders, we're not trying to line our pockets at the expense of our folks, but they do need to understand that we have to make choices and decisions on their behalf that make good sense for the business model, right? I've asked leaders, if you want to add benefits for your team, can you tell them what the next product is, what the next market launch is, what the next thing is you have planned that you need their help on?
To get there, to be able to...
And then when that delivers, then you say, we're going to do a comp analysis and go through that process. Or we're going to add, we're going to add a half day on Friday or a whole day on Friday in the summers, right? We're going to add extra time off, right? Any of those things you're going to add. Can you tell them how it works in the business model? So it just seems so simple when I'm saying it, and believe me, I've got my
just thinking,
but I'm the one sort of trying to figure this out.
Because that's what I'm thinking. Most of the business owners listening to this are probably going through this at the moment. The small, medium-sized business where they're thinking about it in terms of how do I find this balance, which is the wrong way to think about it to start with.
Holding the tension.
But I need to get more out of my people. We need to get to whatever the priorities are, whatever the metrics are, that hard edge. But at the same time, I want to create a great culture because I know that's going to carry me forward. But I feel like probably in these times where growth is tough, business is tough, survival.
It's harder than it's ever been.
It's harder than it's ever been.
And it is never going to get easier.
The first thing that gets kind of sacrificed is the culture, the values. Those are the things that sort of throw them out and double down on them.
Or the converse happens. We hold on to the values and the people and the things, and we compromise the business model. We can't afford them.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it as a composite, which is that ampersand in between people-hearted and business-minded, you have to hold yourself accountable to holding two things at once, and then finding the path from there. So it's not an all or nothing. Like you have to scale way over. It is move toward that up and to the right. I was thinking about this morning.
So we've got this diagram that we're going to drop in.
Yeah.
And we've got the X.
So axes. I think they say axes, right? The left side is business-minded.
Business-minded.
The bottom is people-hearted.
It's people-hearted.
Right.
And the top right quadrant, Ruby, is where we're trying to
go toward wonder.
Toward wonder.
So we naturally go toward one or the other. We know where we are. The most important thing that I could say today is to know where you are on a model like this. I go up and to the right. That's where founders go.
Yeah. Most founders are going up to the right, straight.
Right. Things start to get chaotic. There's chaos in the organization. What do we do as founder? We add to the chaos. We put more urgency in. We start to say, we've got to do this, right? And people start getting all upset and like, oh my God, I don't know if we're going to make it. So if we can just see, that's where I'm at. I'm in chaos. I'm adding chaos. What could I do to move 1% over toward wonder? So that's the practice. I'm in chaos. I'm in fear. Chaos is always about fear. What is something that else is true?
So you almost got this sort of needle, and it's either too low or too high on that axis.
Yeah.
And wonder is what's pulling it back to where it needs to be, right?
What it could be.
Could be.
Yeah. What I think is what it could be.
Right? It's just little adjustments.
It's right to ask the team. Gosh, guys, we're getting ready to launch this, and I'm afraid that it's not ready. I'm afraid it's not ready. Now it's in relationship. You've spoken about your fear. Hopefully you also have some personal practices to work with fear, but you've spoken with the team. I'm afraid. I don't know that this is whatever, right? We're not going to make it in some way. And you say to the team, let's talk about it. You've made a relational move that you've already put yourself in inquiry with the team. Let's think together about it. You're in wonder. Actually, you've moved toward wonder. You might not be in a full-on wonder state, like some blissful thing, but you've moved that direction. And so then that creates, for the people that care about people, they're going to come your direction too, likely. I think the magnetic force is wonder.
And wonder's really getting curious about.
It's curiosity and inquiry and joy. Like, we aren't going to find these things we need. I just keep saying it over and over. I'm like a broken record. It's like you are not going to have discernment, wisdom, clarity. When we talk about clarity and leadership, when you're over-pegged on being business-minded, you are not going to have full clarity. But if you make a 1% move toward this idea of wonder, I wonder what would happen if I disclosed I'm afraid, or I think we're going down the wrong road, or I think we're not, like the leader that said to you, I'm afraid that we've over-indexed on the hard side of business, right? The edge, the business edge. And in that moment, you can go into asking your team and asking yourself, what would be a good next step? Now you're in active choice. Fear will never let you be in an active choice. You're always in reactive choice, if it's choice at all.
I'm curious about how, Beck, this came to you. You've had an interesting journey. When you over at StickerGiant, were you thinking this way already? We talk about one of the biggest things for entrepreneurs is this kind of shift, this mind shift, this mindset change. And when I go back to that entrepreneur, it wasn't the one who's over-indexed now. It wasn't so much that EOS improved the business, but that he had a mindset change.
That's right.
Along your journey, has this just kind of been kind of peeling back the layers as you've gone along, right?
It has.
Or was there a tipping point?
Its birthplace is StickerGiant, and its specific birthplaces with Ed Olivo. He was on my leadership team at StickerGiant, and he came up with the phrase "people-hearted and business-minded." We did a lot of video that we put out for content, and he got caught on video saying, "Here at StickerGiant, we're people-hearted and business-minded." Now, let me just say, people-hearted and business-minded is an ambitious goal. It's an affirmation. It's a trajectory we're trying to go. Like
something we're working.
We'll never be perfectly right, but holding that tension. And I would say, yeah, we were doing some of that, but it was organic, and I hadn't had the time and space really to sort of explore it. So I asked Ed. I said, I think I want to use it as the ethos for humankind business leaders, and he of course said yes. And so since I've been using it, in the last 2 years, I've been working on it. And in the last probably 6 months, I've worked on it even more. And I was just away for 2 weeks off grid, and came back to the world tilted again on its frame, right?
Yeah.
And we're in even more polarization.
Yeah.
And something happened in me that I knew people-hearted and business-minded is what I had to continue to work on. So it's been iterative, right? I'm also certified as a mindful awareness and meditation teacher. I certainly have a practice myself of that for almost 4 decades. And I just saw it so clearly. Like, this is playing out on the world stage. It is certainly alive in our country and between our political parties, because we can't hold two things at once.
We can only be
lost. Yes.
Blinkered on one thing.
When things get hard, we find our location and we double down, and that's a signal we're in fear.
And we don't get curious and try and find that.
We're not even interested. So when fear starts stacking on itself, I have no interest in anything other than this thing. And so that's what I see happening. Now, you mentioned, my folks grew up in the country. I learned a lot of my work ethic from people in the country. And I also learned a lot from growing up in a fundamental evangelical alt-right Christian home. My dad was a minister.
Yeah.
My mom taught in Christian school. So if you think about
I never thought about him being an entrepreneur, but we were talking
about yes. Yes, my wife Lisa calls my dad the Jesus entrepreneur, which is such a beautiful capture of my dad. He started a church.
Yeah.
A startup.
It is a startup. You're going to build your flock following. Yeah.
And I watched him as a kid, just like any founder. I like thinking about it now, retrospectively. I saw him as a kid to have all the founder struggles, question himself, have people in the church that, had other opinions, and financial things that he struggled with. He was a Jesus entrepreneur. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And, holding the tension, right? I'm not just making this stuff up because it sounds good. I lived in that tension from my early 40s until I lost my parents. I lost my mom about 7 years ago, and my dad a few years prior. Yeah. But I stayed in relationship with them. I had friends that would say, why are you staying in relationship with them based on what they believe? And I'm like, because I love them.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but it's the thing I love about this part of who I am too that relates to business. When my parents were living and they would come visit me, and when I would go to visit them after I moved out here, we always had projects to do. We worked with our hands. And the projects were the way all the differences that we had, that I had set some boundaries around what we could and couldn't talk about, right? We talked a lot about the birds and the weather and our gardens. But when we would be physically together, I always had a list of projects at their house or mine when I lived in Virginia that we couldn't possibly complete because that was what we shared in common. We love to do things around the house and take care of our properties, right?
Yeah.
And it was just such a sweet way that we could be together and know that we had radically different opinions about things. But that wasn't what we focused on. So essentially, I mean, I'm kind of thinking about we both made some 1% moves toward wonder, to be curious about, well, what would it be like for us to stay in contact with this big elephant in the room of, I left Virginia to attend the largest Buddhist inspired university in North America here in Boulder, Europa University, founded by Shogren Trungpa Rinpoche, a very provocative person in the Buddhist community. And my parents they didn't know how to process that, right? But we still stayed in contact, right?
You still had that curiosity, the wonder, trying to understand each other, and that love.
I was so clear that my parents were my best friends growing up.
Yeah.
I spent all my time as a kid with my parents. I mowed the grass and worked on cars and worked on the house with my dad. And when it was time for dinner to come, I would go inside and help my mom with dinner and set the table and do all of the things. So there was just this way that they were part of me. And how could I honor that by holding the tension? Right, and I'm also queer and non-binary. I mean, it just goes on and on about the whole reasons why there would seemingly be no reason for me to stay in contact with my evangelical, Christian, fundamental, alt-right parents, and yet there was every reason to be. And they died 2 years apart from each other, and I had the great honor of being with both of them in their last moments.
I love it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And that's this work, I think, is also a tribute to them in some way, in a way they could have never understood, right? And I don't think it's, people are like, well, gosh, your parents have really different belief systems. I think my dad would love this people-hearted and disconnected. Yeah. I think he would see the Christian value in it. I think he would understand it as a Jesus entrepreneur.
See the value that would be next to one of the other side, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I've witnessed it evolve. I've witnessed your model and your thinking evolve, because we've tried to do this 5 times. And, and the months apart, and Courtney's behind the camera at the moment. She's sending me, have you hit the record button now for the podcast?
We actually had to have it. We had to have it here. So
yes,
thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you. But just seeing how it's evolved for you with comes back to that kind of 1%. There's a few things in it that the model's going to evolve over time as you're working with entrepreneurs, people kind of leaning on the experience, but being able to take that time away and just drop off the grid, as you said. So you, as a business owner yourself, can think about, how am I creating the best model for my clients? Am I creating something that, because I've seen this evolve almost in the past few days as well.
Well, you've contributed, right? What I would say is, so that I can provide the best way for my clients to think about it, but it is an interactive So I tell my clients, my work is yours and yours is mine. And how could it not be? I mean, we're in an intimate process of talking about fear in your business and, how to do things. How could it not be intimate? So my clients have contributed to this.
I love that, because that's kind of the small giants. One of the characteristics that Bo wrote about, that the community shapes the business and the business contributes to the community. And I can see that's happening here with you and your clients.
Well, it's actually where we're losing our way in politics and our culture. Right?
You're not getting that.
We can't get, right. We call it cross-pollination or whatever, but we keep moving back to the thing that we believe, and we keep double down on that, which puts us in crippling and debilitating fear. No matter how good intended it is, people-hearted is good intended, and so is business-minded. But if you're going to double down on either one of them, you're going to start doing destructive things. I call it undignified, right? You do undignified shit when you double down on one polar opposite of something, and you forget it's all related, and we actually need it. Because you lose connection with yourself first in doing that. And then as soon as you lose that connection with yourself, you are absolutely disconnected with everything else. And here we are, trying to run businesses, many of which my clients and many of our friends want to do things that matter in the world. But we're not admitting that if we have a dysregulated nervous system, that really great thing we want to put in the world is likely to not be as successful as if we will say, I've got to know where I'm afraid. I got to own that my nervous system is running through this organization. So I better learn how to be stable and remember I need both. And I say it all the time, we need both and we can do both. We can be people hearted, and we can be business minded. We actually need to be successful.
So the cold plunges and all those other great things are good, but you need to be thinking about this as well.
Yeah, that's right. The cold plunges and the massages and the mani-pedis and all the things, they're great. But they're the places you go for wellness. What I work with leaders on is how do you not need to go anywhere and you can find a ability to come back to yourself, have practices to work with what's going on for you, know where you're at, not try to push it away, and have an ability to work with it so you gain that insight, wisdom, discernment, which we'd all raise our hand for those things.
So before we got on, we talked about the reason this podcast exists, and it's called Freedom Experience. And for me, it was all about creating a place where I could bring on folks like you to help business owners who're stuck, who've lost that momentum, who are feeling alone and feeling frustrated, to try and escape that place.
Yeah.
And we had a really good conversation about what freedom means to you, thoughts of freedom, before we got on. So I'd like to kind of put that question to you again. And what does freedom mean to you? What do you think about when you think about freedom?
Yeah. It's a great question because in my study, practice, and teaching mindful awareness and meditation practices, mostly in the Vipassana tradition, that tradition is really about inquiry, personal inquiry. And I think freedom comes from the ability to have a rich inner world where you're able to, I call it, be your own best friend.
Yeah,
right?
I love that. Yeah.
Where you can actually come back to yourself, you can get grounded in any given moment. Freedom is our birthright.
Would I have a beer with this person kind of thing?
Yeah. I have a beer with me and me, right?
Yeah.
But it's our birthright. And in the way I think about it and the way I believe, we were born with freedom as a birthright. And then we add all the stuff of our lived experience, right? And where a fear and a jacked nervous system really take us out of freedom. What I'm interested in is how do we move back toward freedom, which I'm calling wonder, and still not push everything else away and know that that's part of the human condition as well.
Yeah.
So freedom is really being realistic and real with ourselves, and taking time to reflect. And then one of the things I love so much is working with a client, and they, every time I meet with a client, by and large, I'm asking, how's your practice going? And I love it when a client comes back and tells me, Beck, this thing happened. I ended up saying this thing, and I wasn't it just surprised me. And I said, that's your practice finding you. So just like if you wanted to be a great baseball player, you certainly, if you wanted to bat 500, right, you'd be in the batting cage all the time. So if you practice, then when we get in a tight moment, the practice actually finds you. And that discernment and wisdom and insight arises from freedom that you've created. You've created space inside of yourself so that fear isn't taking over, that jack amygdala gripping. So if you say something to me I don't like, I can be like that. And then I can calm myself for a moment and say, geez, John, tell me what you mean by that. As opposed to well, aren't you the biggest asshole walking fit? Those
So get
fear
curious.
related. Yeah. So I think freedom is the ability to get curious, to learn to work with our experience as it is, and have these practices that help us have a full experience, not these experiences that are getting us polarized from each other, which are all about fear.
Yeah.
They're not about freedom.
Yeah. I think back to this is one of my core values, and it was born at the age, I guess, of 7, 8, 9, living in this country. And in New Hampshire, the state motto on my parents' car was live free or die. So freedom, I'd come from a country where there was apartheid, and more than half of our population was effectively sort of living like slaves. Came here, and it was the time the space shuttles and open gardens and lemonade stands and all those wonderful things. And that value was so important to me. I'm curious whether you think we're moving away from freedom in general, or is that changing, or is it?
I think fear has us in its grips. On both sides of every equation, I think fear has us in our grips. Because we're losing hope. We're losing hope that, we've got to come back together, people are saying. We've got to find a shared something. And it feels too big for people to do. I'm saying, what could you do that's 1%? I'm watching my inclination when things happen that I need space from, I'll take YouTube and things off of my phone. When we came back from being off grid for 2 weeks and the world tilted again, that inclination came, was like, I'm just going to take YouTube and some of these other things off my phone. And then I had an inquiry with myself. No. And then I came back with, I'm actually going to leave it on my phone. And I'm going to watch people's opinions that are diametrically opposed to mine. And I'm going to feel the feelings I have. And I'm going to check out, what is it that I believe? Right? And what is it in that person that's saying that I don't believe that? But they also, in the practice of Vipassana, the practice is everyone wants to be happy, just like me. And I know that's true because it makes me feel so emotional.
Yeah.
And that's freedom, is to say, you want to be happy like me. This other person that thinks and behaves in ways that are shocking and horrible to me, that person also wants to be happy. But we can't do that because we can't hold two things at once. We can only just keep gripping the thing that if we don't believe it, if we don't convince enough people to do that thing that I think is right, which is what's
actually taking our freedom.
That's right. It's actually eroding freedom. And here we all are watching it. So keep practicing, right? Keep practicing.
Beck, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
It's an honor.